That's quite a few cards. Now, we were talking last night actually about this, about how Canonist and Teague are good in this matchup. All right, anyway, so here we go. Round 4 of the Star City Games Open. Welcome, I'm Gavin Verhey. I'm here with Adrian Sullivan. We're going to watch these two players go at it. On your left, you've got Ben Weinberg. Ben Weinberg is playing High Tide. We thought it was exactly how Alex Hatfield's list. He told us it was 73 cards the same, but he's changed it up a little bit and has, in a Wild Innovation, a different number of preordains and ponders than Alex Hatfield has, in addition to a couple small sideboard changes. Other than that, Alex Hatfield's list. On the other hand, we have Pat Cox on the right. Pat is playing Zoo. Zoo with Stoneforge Mystics, no Green Sun Zenith, and Ben leads with an island, a fetch land to do an island there.
There we go.
Pat has got Stoneforge Mystic for Sword of Body and Mind and Umezawa's Jite. No Feast and Famine, but he does have a sideboard Sword of Fire and Ice, not Light and Shadow.
I'm going to predict, unless Ben Weinberg struggles on mana, that Ben Weinberg is going to take this 2-0.
I feel like the High Tide deck is really favored against the Zoo deck. Zoo doesn't have a lot of good ways to interact. It's got a quick clock, but that's about it. Granted, Pat has a lot of sideboard cards, 4 Mindbreak Trap, 3 Canonists, 2 Teague, but like you and I were talking about last night in our hotel room, we really felt like the Canonists and the Teagues weren't quite as good against the High Tide deck as other Storm decks because they have better ways to interact with those cards.
Yeah, I mean, we have access here to Snap, to Wipe Away, to Repeal, to Echoing Truth, and you can tutor for those cards as well.
Yep, using Cunning Wish going into your sideboard. Looks like Ben Weinberg Merchant scrolls up a High Tide, getting ready to go off with this combo deck. And let's see. Pat Cox, in the meantime, has a Loam Lion. He's going to crack that fetch land to get a forest to turn that Loam Lion into a 2/3. And we'll probably see another creature enter the fray here.
Okay. Turn 2.
Yep, Loam Lion crashes in for 2.
Kurdape, very like Lion, comes down with another friend. And a main phase burn spell. Have to do that main phase, obviously, but Chain Lightning hitting the face, knocking down to 15. It should be.
Oh, he cracked the fetch land
14,
too.
13? 13.
So Ben Weinberg looking at a hand, looks like Preordain, Force of Will, Time Spiral, Cunning Wish, High Tide. And he's trying to figure out if he can go off this turn or if he's got to wait one more turn to do it. And he's going to go for Preordain. Looks at his top 2 cards. Going to take one of them. And the M11 Common showing up everywhere from Standard, Extended, all the way back to Legacy. Alright, draws a Merchant Scroll. And we're going to search up another card that Ben needs. Looks like High Tide. And so Ben's going to pass back to Pat Cox, and Ben is getting ready to go off next turn. As long as Pat doesn't have a way to kill Ben here.
I mean, the thing about this is Ben is safe enough that, you know, he's going to be taking 4, going to 9. Like, there's very, very few draws that are going to make Patrick be able to do the kill here.
He would have to have triple bolt, pretty much.
And that's doable. He does have Lightning Bolt, Chain Lightning in combination, so there are cards to do that.
Right. He has 5. He already cast 1 Chain Lightning, so he has 5 burn spells, and he'd have to have 3 of them in his hand.
Let's see what happens.
Let's see what he goes for.
Says go.
All right, just passes.
And now it's Ben's turn to go off, lest he fear death. High Tide.
And, yep, High Tide time. So
the tide is at 2.
Adrian grabs the pad here so we can keep track at home for all you guys. So, all right.
2 mana.
2 mana in the pool. I think probably, yep, High Tide.
High Tide. The tide is at 3. 3 mana per. 1 mana floating. He can tap that last island for a 4th for a turnabout.
Yep.
0 mana left in the pool.
Turnabout is indeed fair play.
Now
Untaps
has
all of his
access
cards.
to 9 mana.
And Pat
on
Cox
the upcoming turn.
reads Turnabout.
Always a good sign.
Didn't know you could do that. I thought reset only happened on my turn. All right, let's see.
There is 6. There is 9. I see the Merchant Scroll about to do some work.
No.
Oh, another?
Untaps his lands.
Oh, never mind. 0 mana.
Untap his lands without a spell. The old Alt-U method.
Control Z, Control Z, Control Z. Okay. So, just spends the Merchant Scroll there. 1 mana left, probably for another High Tide, I would be willing to bet.
Shuffles Meditate to the front.
I don't know what else we have in his hand, but the way he tapped that would lead me to believe that. There's the High Tide at the front.
Yeah,
they're using the Merfolk High Tide. I'm not sure if I'm a fan of that one as much as some of the others.
I actually am a big fan of the Merfolk High Tide. That's the one I always use.
Down to a 0 mana. The Tide is at 4.
Yeah, Lewis Laskin agrees. He says it's the best one.
Oh, no.
Oh, this is kind of cool. I haven't had this view before.
Nice, nice. Look at that. Yeah. And there's not much. One of the things to remember when you're watching a High Tide deck play, the permanents don't change so much.
So, all right, Ben goes for Cunning Wish. Goes to his deck box. And
12 mana.
Turnabout.
Pardon me, 6 mana. Minus, there we go, there's Turnabout.
Yep, he gets Turnabout. Going to generate even more mana with this High Tide deck.
Untap.
And for those out there who don't know how this works, it's going to either end in a Brain Freeze for Patrick Cox's entire deck, or a Blue Sun Zenith causing Patrick Cox to draw his entire deck, and therefore deck out. All right, and there's Time Spiral for Ben Weinberg. So they're going to shuffle in their hands, draw 7 cards, and that's going to refuel Ben Weinberg's engine. Plus, he gets to untap all of his lands.
Yeah, one of the things when High Tide was first created as a deck, you didn't die from damage during the time that you were going off. At the time, back in those old school rules, damage happened at the end of the phase, and then you would die. Ben Weinberg does not get to have that luxury. He actually has to worry about being bolted out.
So it looks like Patrick shuffles in a hand full of bolts and helixes.
That's the 2-letter chime. And 2 o'clock.
New hands. Untaps all of those lands.
So what exactly happened there? So Patrick Cox's hand looked like it had bolt, helix from what I saw. Didn't seem like he cast either of those bolts.
You know, he might not recognize that there's a real possibility he could kill his opponent. He might be just waiting to see if his opponent goes off, not remembering that, oh yeah, this damage is going to happen, you know, and 7 new cards could mean I could finish you off.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what we have. So Ben Weinberg draws.
So the Tide is at 4. Remember. Land for the turn.
And
I see a Merchant Scroll, a Turnabout, maybe 2 Merchant Scrolls.
Is that a Mind Over Matter all the way on the right? Could be. All right, so he goes for
Preordain. Oh, take back cease.
Guess he didn't tap mana for it.
Yeah, Preordain.
Yeah, Preordain for Ben Weinberg. So Ben looks at his top 2.
Looks like he's going to bury one of them.
Yep, sends one south and draws the other.
The other one, it looks like a Cunning Wish.
Yep, Cunning Wish in Ben's hand.
I think I see Merchant Scroll.
Yeah, and that is Mind Over
Matter. Zing.
And that will do it as if it wasn't enough already. Mind Over Matter, nice little card, unrestricted unbanned not that long ago. What it says is you can discard a card to tap or untap any permanent.
Right.
So you can discard a card to basically just generate mana.
Yep. In the background. Oh, I don't know what's going on, but it has to do with that phone there. Let's check what it says.
3D card artists in the house.
16 mana created. Every card is now worth 4 mana because of that Mind Over Matter. A Turnabout is worth a little bit more than that. It says 12 mana are gained. He can do 16 more for 28 mana total, plus the cards in his hand that he chooses to toss away.
And
Merchant Scroll going down to 14 mana in the pool right now.
I'm probably getting Meditate out of Imagine just to load up on cards.
There's a Meditate.
Yep, Meditate is correct. And gonna cast that Meditate, skip your next turn, draw 4 cards. When there is no next turn, seems like a pretty fair deal.
11 mana remains, 4 more cards. 4 cards equal to 16 mana.
Yep.
And that's assuming that they aren't worth more than that.
Yeah, turnabouts. Let's see, Brainstorm. Looks like Brainstorm, Candelabra, High Tide.
High Tide. The tide is at 5.
All right, so all of those islands have tapped for 5 mana.
He's got 11 mana floating currently.
Just insane.
10 mana floating.
Oh my.
Force of Will in hand to deal with any possible burn problems. So 10 mana plus 20 mana equals 30 mana. Minus 4 is 26 mana. And then another plus 20 is 46 mana.
Yep, and now if all Ben has to do is find his Blue Sun Zenith, discards a card, untaps
the Candelabra.
Yeah, so now Ben
42 mana.
Yep.
62 mana.
Yeah, so Ben has 62 mana in his mana pool. All he needs.
Merchant Scroll, 60 mana. Oh, he's just untapping, my bad. He's not even casting, he's just using it for more mana.
Let's get to 100, sure, why not? Oh, and that's Cunning Wish for Blue Sun
Cunning
Zenith.
Wish.
And go for the old 84 for 1. And that's the game.
And Patrick Cox pulls them all in. He's done. To the game 2.
Yeah, and Ben with a pretty explosive combo finish there. Shows you how powerful Mind Over Matter can be in this combo deck.
Yeah, one of the things that's actually really cool about about High Tide as a deck to practice with and play with, a lot of times what you do when you play High Tide is, or probably when you play a deck, is you say to yourself, how do I do against a Goldfish, right? And High Tide is actually one of those decks, because of the ways you have to manipulate and work the library and do your library manipulation. Practicing against a Goldfish is rational, where you say to yourself, okay, I'm going to tell myself I have to cast a Force of Will this game and go off on turn 4, and that's what I'm going to do against my aggressive Goldfish, which is going to force me to do a turn 1 or turn 2 Force of Will. And then practice and see if you can get it off.
So let's see what we have coming in from the sideboards here. So in a Pat Cox's sideboard, 4 Mindbreak Trap, 100%, 3 Etherstone Canonist, 2 Gaddock Teague. Or I imagine we're going to see all 9 of those cards here. So I don't think anything else is going to come in. The question is what comes out, and I feel like the Stoneforge Mystic package is probably just too slow.
I think it's way too slow. His paths are too just don't hit anything.
Right.
They can only be used as mana acceleration if he wants to have that happen. The Kasali Pride Mage has some utility. I think Knight the Reliquary is probably also too slow. Sword of Body and Mind, that's a lot of mana.
It's a lot of mana to invest. I think it's worth cutting. I think you cut the 2 Mystics and the... I think the clear cuts to me are the 3 Path to Exiles, 2 Mystic, 1 Sword, 1 Jite. So I think you cut those 7...
And that gives you 7 cards.
Right. So you need 2 more.
2 more cards. I would kill probably 2 Knight of the Reliquary. And then you've got your other 2 cards.
Yep, and that's all. That's everything you need. You want to keep in all your burn, because the burn are like creatures with haste on the last turn, and that's exactly what you're looking for.
Yeah. Now, if Patrick Cox had a pair of bolts, is one of the questions, maybe 1 bolt, 1 helix. The helix actually was not a card he could have cast on that last turn and had hope to win. But if he had lightning bolt, just throwing it out there would have been a useful thing to do, because, as we say, this is not 5th edition rules. This is rules that have been many editions long since past. So you do die at 0 life these days, even though you didn't back when High Tide was first created.
Right. And as far as a Ben Weinberg sideboard to go, you can't really do a lot with the sideboard of this deck, because you have a wish board, and you have such a robust wish board, you can't really afford to mess up your main deck at all. So
one of the things to remember is the act, and a lot of people that don't use wish boards enough, that they don't necessarily know this. When you have a card that you might want to use, but you don't have time to wish for it, you just bring it into your main.
Right. And I think that's going to be the case with some of these bounce spells. Repeal definitely coming in, Echoing Truth probably coming in too. So 2 Repeals and 1 Echoing Truth, 3 little bounce spells there. Maybe Wipe Away, but Wipe Away might be a little too slow. Snap is one because he's coming in though.
I don't mind bringing in 1 Wipe Away into the main, just because there could be some permanent in play that might be too problematic,
right.
And you might not have time to be able to Cunning Wish for it. And on the other hand, the Snap in the board, I like that as a potential wish target, just because if you're going to keep in the wish targets, that is a way to untap 2 land that you can wish for. And that can be a big deal when you're trying to go off on tight mana.
Well, and even more importantly, it's a card that you can Cunning Wish for and then go to combo off with on your turn.
Right,
you
right.
go end step Cunning Wish, untap, snap your Ethersworn Canonist, you can combo off.
Yeah, and you can go off on this with only 3 lands. If you go like high tide, third land, snap your, let's say for the sake of argument, your Gaddock Teague, right? Untap 2 of those lands and then begin your process of going off.
Sure.
Okay, Patrick Cox is looking at his opening hand. And remember, Patrick has access to several hate-based creatures, Aethersworn Canonist and Gaddock Teague, and then Mindbreak Trap, which is a catch-all against combo just in general.
Yeah, those 4 Mindbreak Traps are rough, and I don't know if Ben is going to expect those. The creatures you can kind of see coming because they're on the battlefield, but the Mindbreak Traps, those come out of left field sometimes, not the battlefield, and they're a lot harder to deal with. Looks like Pat's going to mulligan, ship his 7 here. And yeah, I mean, I feel like Ben has an advantage in this matchup. We'll see if all Pat's hate cards will turn it around. Those 9 hate cards are pretty potent, especially with Mindbreak Trap on top of the quick clock that Pat provides, because he forces Ben to go off, and then if he has a Mindbreak Trap, that'll just shut him cold.
Now, one of the things that Ben Weinberg might not know if he has not played this matchup very often is that there can be some utility at times in casting a turnabout preemptively on your opponent, even though they aren't of blue deck, just to try to shut off their ability to do Pyroblasts. So that's something that you can do. There are no Pyroblasts in Pat Cox's deck, but that doesn't mean that Ben knows that. And if he has the luxury to do so, it can be very useful just to tap that down, particularly if you have the ability, tap it down, you've got your high tides going, then go to your attack step, so any red that they float goes away, then go to your second main phase and finish the combo off.
Right, or just tap all the creatures and prevent some damage. So it looks like Patrick Cox leads off with pretty typical fetch land into dual land into Grim Lavamancer.
Not the card he wants to see on turn 1, but still a card that can put on some damage.
Yeah, that mulligan from Pat Cox is not what he wanted. And there's a Ponder. Once upon a Midnight Dreary.
Looks like a fishy Ponder.
To go with his fishy high tides.
Yeah, I have to say that my preference for high tides is the Drew Tucker high tides, but that's just because I like that art.
Man, I love the Merfolk one.
Surfing high tides, though. Come on, surfing. Okay.
Which hymn do you like?
Which hymn? I like the Circle of Chanting hymn.
See, I like the Wolves hymn. I think we just have an artistic preference difference.
Maybe you're just younger and hipper with your hipster style
wolves. With the wolves, yeah. 3 wolves.
Okay, second land here from Patrick Cox. So now he has access to all the colors of mana that he needs. A Kasali Pride Mage gives that Grim Lavamancer +1/+1 on the attack, and also allows him to have a small ability to knock down the Candelabra should Ben Weinberg drop it down.
Yeah, or Mind Over Matter if it's not too late by then. And Ben goes for Merchant Scroll, probably. Looks like he already has High Tide in his hand. He might just want to get Meditate here to fuel up on cards. So I one of those 2. And yeah, there's
there it is. And now Ben Weinberg is at an incredible amount of life here. At 18 life right now, or pardon me, 19. Was that a Force Will over there? Yeah, he used that. Okay, so at 17 life, Brainstorm. What do we have in the art? His life total is not correct on the screen. That's for sure, though.
You're right.
Yeah. So regardless, he's at very high life total. The clock that he's facing puts him down to death. If we imagine a little bit of burn in there, in about 4 turns. That's quite a ways off.
Right. For a high die deck, that's centuries.
Okay. Now we've got a clock. The clock that comes there with Tarmogoyf can mean that this game can actually be over in closer to 2 to 3 turns.
All right. So Ben's sitting at 15.
Yep. Time Spiral in hand, and he's actually going for it here. He's got a High Tide. Hide is at 1.
All right, so Ben is going off.
1/2. High Tide. Tide is at 3. 1 mana floating.
Yep.
4th mana, tapping all of his manas. Turnabout. Oh, Candelabra instead. Candelabra. 3 mana floating. I do not think it was correct to try to go off here.
Yeah.
He could still win very easily, but there's no risk. Why not take another turn and build your hand up? You've got a Merchant Scroll there. You've got a Time Spiral there. Keep Merchant Scroll for a Force of Will. Make it so that you can push off through a Mindbreak Trap.
Yeah, and Lewis Laskin also agrees that he's slightly off camera. He agrees that he thinks that Ben might be preemptively trying to go off. I think maybe Ben's thought process is he's afraid of hate cards. He doesn't want Patrick, he can't be killed, but he doesn't want Patrick to lay like a Canoness or something and have to spend a bunch of time dealing with it.
Yeah, I understand that philosophy. That's why maybe you go Merchant Scroll for Force of Will. So if it happens, you stop it, and then you can go off the next turn with another land. This is why one of the reasons that you can actually practice versus the Goldfish is important. Tell yourself, I'm going to go off on turn 4 this game versus a Force of Will, or with a Force of Will. I'm going to go off on turn 3 this game, and get good at learning when you can do what. Okay, here comes the turnabout.
Yeah, so now his lands all make 3 mana, so he can generate.
Yeah, he got another high tide in there while we were discussing his strategy plans. So he's got the tide is at 4. Turnabout here, he's got 4 mana in his pool. Cunning Wish, he's looking at his options over there. Now remember, one of the things that's kind of fun is these days you can actually bluff a Cunning Wish or any wish by looking through your sideboard. Looking through your sideboard is legal. What did I put in my sideboard? What did I side in? Okay.
It's Pact of Negation.
Pact of Negation. He's going to go Cunning Wish for.
Yep, and he has a high tide in his hand. He wants to make sure that he could beat a Mindbreak trap from Patrick Cox. So there's
a
this.
spiral.
And I don't think Patrick has the Mindbreak trap though.
That doesn't mean he can't find it.
Yep. So now Patrick gets to draw 7 new cards, and he could try and find some Mindbreak traps here. He's got a pretty good chance with 4 traps in his sideboard.
Now, it might seem minuscule, but another small thing that happens, you're talking about a deck that needs to draw the right cards, and it has a large amount of library manipulation to go off. When you have 3 land in play, as opposed to even 4 land in play, even that 1 less land actually matters. I can tell you, I've played about at least 2,000 or 3,000 games of High Tide. I'm not joking there. I've played this extensively for a long time. That 1 land difference probably knocks up your chances of whiffing on something like this by a good 1 or 2%.
Yeah.
Right. A really great note here from off the sidelines. Laskin's telling us that, and this is very, very pointed, that at this point, because there's not a Pride Mage there, and now that Tarmogoyf is a 0-1, Weinburg could theoretically just say, well, you know, it didn't work out, go.
I mean, the other problem is, the other issue is that it also tapped him out of red mana, so he can't bluff Pyroblast anymore.
Yeah.
All right, repeal on Tarmogoyf. So repeals the Goyf to draw a card.
And now Ben really doesn't have to finish going off. He might just do it anyway.
I don't think he has.
And he says,
yeah, he
go.
has nothing in his hand to
I
do.
see Force of Will, and some other fun things in there.
High Tide and a ton of lands. So after all that, Ben just passes the turn. Maybe he did try to go off too fast after all.
This deck is all mana and all library manipulation, basically. But that doesn't mean that you're not going to draw a hand of 7 and not be able to continue. Right. It's one of the reasons why you have to be cautious about the idea of going off.
And giving Patrick 7 fresh cards, giving the Zoo deck 7 fresh cards is certainly not what you want to do. And we'll see if it comes back to bite Ben Weinberg. Patrick clearly happy to not be dead again.
Yes, yes.
Seeing a High Tide fizzle, I don't think we've had that happen on camera yet, so
yeah,
there you go. It is
happens
possible.
an amazing amount of times. Like I said, 1 less land in play increases your chance of fizzling. It's only a small amount, but those small amounts matter.
Yeah, and missing that Pride Mage is a big deal.
Force of Will on that Tarmogoyf, and now we've got a Gaddock Teague, which is probably also going to see a Force of Will if he has it. No. Did he toss the Force of Will with the Force, or does he just not care?
There's a Ponder.
I can't make that out. Is that a pack?
It's Blue Sun Zenith, I see.
Is it?
I'm pretty sure the card with the right is Blue Sun Zenith.
And there's a shuffle.
Looks like that pondering was weak and weary. He's going to shuffle his library.
While you ponder weak and weary. Fabulous, fabulous.
Once upon a midnight dreary.
I take it you study English.
Yeah. I love me some Poe.
Time Spiral, finding his hand after the shuffle. Patrick Cox going on with his next turn. With that Gaddock Teague in play, that means that Ben Weinberg's control mechanisms, like repeal, like Force of Will, don't work. Not only that, his turnabouts can't be used to continue to build up the combo. Gaddock Teague is a really powerful weapon once it's in play.
Yeah, another Lavamancer, Chain Lightning to the face. Dropping Ben Weinberg down to 8 life, I believe. Yep. And there's a Meditate from Ben, but he's
Meditate is not an exciting. Okay, he's going for
all
it.
right, so he's like,
High Tide.
he knows he has to go off here, but
Tide's at 2.
it's going to be rough to win.
Meditate. So this is an all-in right now. If he casts the spell, it's an all-in.
Yeah, yep, he's all in. Pushed all of his chips into the middle, and time to go for it. Drew Repeal,
Repeal doesn't work.
Blue Sun Zenith doesn't do anything.
He needs a snap.
He has Turnabout.
Turnabout doesn't do anything.
But, yeah, not going to be Gaddock Teague. And it looks like he's about to, yep, Ben uses
There
up
we
his
go.
cards.
There we go.
Fizzles on his combo. And Resolve Time Spiral is looking pretty good. And then just didn't draw anything to draw cards. Pretty hard to do in a deck like this, especially since Ben shaved a land out of his deck in the first place. His deck's full of Preordains, Ponders, Meditates. Not going to be good enough. And going to Game 3, with Ben Weinberg will be on the play this time.
I think that this is a good example of a recognition that Ben has not played this deck before. You know, he went for it because he saw the beginnings of being able to go off.
Yeah.
Time Spiral does not mean you win.
Right. I mean, in that situation, he's very likely to win, but it didn't work out.
I would actually say when you're on 3 lands, you're kind of likely to win. You know, he had the Tide at 4 or 5. I forget what we have. I've got it crossed off now that we're going to the next game. And but like, it's actually really surprising how often it doesn't work out.
Let's see what he could have drawn. He could draw a Brainstorm.
He could have drawn a large number of cards.
Yeah, the fact that he drew, I mean, I can understand fizzling from that point. The fact that he drew no card drawing cards is pretty crazy. I mean, no Brainstorms, no Time Spirals, no Blue Sun Zenith, no Meditate, no Merchant Scroll, no Preordain, no Ponder, no Intuition, no Cunning Wish. That's a ton of cards.
Well, you have to recognize that, like, he has 15 land in his deck that are not going to get him there, right? Then he has 4 High Tides in his deck, which are not going to get him there. That's 19 cards. He's got 3 Turnabouts in his deck. They're not going to get him there. That's 22 cards. He's got Candelabras of Danos in his deck, which are not going to get him there. Now we're at 26 cards that aren't going to do it. Heck, even if he draws a Mind Over Matter, it's not going to get him there. That's 27 cards. Force of Will, that's 31 cards. Over half of the cards in his deck aren't going to get him there.
Sure.
So now, even if he draws a Brainstorm or a Ponder, that can still hit him to cards that might not get him there.
Right, I agree. It's just very weird. You see 31 cards, right? And so it's about half his deck. He's got some in play, some in his hand. We'll say it all evens out, right? Or some in play, some lands in play, I guess. So maybe a little bit less on the land side. Minus 3 lands, so it looks like 28 cards. So
no, I accounted for that.
You
I accounted for that.
Okay. So every other draw should be a card drawing spell. And to see 7 cards that didn't see any was
and remember
pretty
though,
strange.
That card draw spell has to get you into another card draw spell.
Right.
Like, this is one of the reasons why I kind of wonder if there's room, instead of all of these 1-drops, if there's room for Impulse in this deck. It might be that Impulse is just too slow and too passé, but a part of me wonders if it's not something to think about.
I think I would definitely max out on Preordains and Ponders before I start playing Impulses.
Impulse digs you a little bit further. And also, you know, like, it's a lot, that end of turn Impulse actually has real value.
Sure. I don't know
that it's necessarily correct. I'm not saying that. I'm saying I wonder if it's worth considering.
Sure. I mean, Impulse was good back in the old days, but the extra mana makes such a huge difference, especially and Ponder still digs you 3 cards deep. So
just wondering, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly something you could do, but the deck is pretty tight for space, it seems.
Yeah, well, Impulse you can cast on turn 2 compared to a Meditate, right? And Impulse you can cast when you're not sure if you're going to go off.
One of the biggest mistakes.
All right,
yeah, Lewis Laskin's going to join us.
Going to join us for the 3rd game here between Ben Weinberg and Pat Cox.
Definitely with High Tide, when you're merchant scrolling, you're going to be getting High Tides a lot if you need to go off aggressively like you do against Zoo. But one of the biggest mistakes I see people making playing the High Tide deck is not looking for Brainstorm.
Yes.
Or in trying to go off too early, because Brainstorm protects you from everything and really shores up any looseness.
Yeah, the Brainstorm, because there's so many other ways to, like, with your fetch lands, which on 3 lands it's too late to try to do. when you go on turn 4, that brainstorm can be something that you're sandbagging in for like your effect of your ancestral. You know, and even if you're just going to go off right then, a brainstorm is an ancestral because you don't have to shuffle it up if you get a time spiral to keep going.
Yep. And there's a ponder from Ben Weinberg.
Okay, Patrick Cox with one of his best openings, a probable 2-3.
Yep. No wild in the coddle so far this match, but Loam Lion still pretty good. 2-3 for 1. And there's the brainstorm that we were
Main
just
phase
talking
brainstorm,
about.
which is the way to rock it these days, I think, when it comes to a deck that's not going to be duressing you, not going to be thought seizing you.
And he drew a fetch land plus preordain, so we can go fetch land, crack, shuffle those away, cast preordain, which is a big deal.
Yeah.
He also knows the fetch land's the top card, which is awesome from the ponder.
Yeah, the ponder sets everything up nicely. Those ponders and preordains, really good at making sure you find the cards that you want.
Okay, and there it is, preordain. Meanwhile, Patrick shuffling the deck from the previous fetch of Ben Weinberg. 2 cards. Looks like they might both be buried or they might both be kept. The way that Ben usually does his preordains. Oh, splitsies. Whiffy whiff. Pass it over to Patrick Cox. There's the bonus for the Loam Lion.
Yep, find a forest based land here.
Let's see if he drops one of the disruptive cards, one of his Ethersworn Canonist or Gaddock Teagues.
Sure, that's what he'd like to have. Let's see if he has it. Serves him for 2 first. And yeah, there's a Canonist.
There's a Canonist. Does that work? I see a Force of Will. There it goes.
Yeah.
And that looks like a Blue Sun Zenith might have been tossed out there.
Exiles the Blue Sun Zenith.
I feel like Pat probably almost definitely has a Teague if he runs up the Canonist first, and almost don't want to force it because it's probably easier to answer.
I see Preordain and Ponder, it looked like, in his hand.
Yeah, I can kind of see your logic there. I mean, if the one problem about Canonist is it does slow down you can't play 2 cantrips this turn, for example.
Right.
But the Teague is going to really, really mess you up. Okay, so he shuffles on that Ponder. Once again, a weak and weary Ponder.
One of the great things about Turnabout is it targets your opponent, so it's effectively just Cryptic Command when you need it, which Teague stops, and that's hugely problematic also.
Yeah, I mean, Teague I think is probably the more disruptive card, although you can kind of start going off and see if you can get to Cunning Wish, but Canonist certainly causes some problems too. We'll see.
There we go. On top. And
triple.
another Preordain.
I guess he's glad he got rid of that Canonist here, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let me just check my sideboard over here.
Seeing what he has.
So what did I do again?
Making sure he didn't board in that other Blue Sun Zenith or anything crazy like that. What's interesting to note is you can't Cunning Wish for exiled cards anymore.
I hate that.
So,
that makes me mad.
Justice.
Yeah. So since he exiled his Blue Sun Zenith, the Force of Will can't find it with Cunning Wish. But I assume he still has a Zenith in his sideboard.
So then you can play Underground Seas and just Infernal Tutor for Time Spiral after you cast it. That probably seems fair.
Pat Cox serves in for 2 with his Loam Lion. And for those of you just joining us, I'm Gavin Verhey. I'm here with Adrian Sullivan and guest host Louis Laskin. And we're watching the 3rd game of a tense match between Patrick Cox and Ben Weinberg. Patrick Cox playing his trademark Zudak. There's Wild in the Coddle for you right there. Followed by Ethersworn Canonist. There's some nice hate cards he boarded in for this matchup. Ben Weinberg playing Mono Blue High Tide took the game pretty fast in the first game. Second game he fizzled after going off with what looked to be a pretty strong combo draw. And then here we are in game 3.
Now, one of the things we know that Ben Weinberg has repeal, and where Gaddock Teague can stop the repeal, Ethersworn Canonist cannot. So Ben is a little bit less hurt by that Canonist.
Right.
It does stop him while it's in play, but it doesn't do the same kind of work that the Gaddock Teague can do.
He has a Cunning Wish in his hand, but he's going to need a really good top deck, because even if he bounces the Canonist, he has to...
Bolt, down to 4.
Yep, it's next turn or bust for Ben Weinberg. All right.
Cunning Wish.
There's the Cunning Wish.
Get Snap.
I think it probably has to be Snap. If you looked at the sideboard.
He can't even high tide first if he draws it.
What to do? Surveying the board.
Looks like his hand
Land
is.
in hand. Look, he got a little frowny face there.
Huh. All right, there's a repeal.
He's going to need a great draw then. I
Ooh,
saw a
time-
time spiral.
I mean,
that might not be what he wants
He
right
already
now.
had one in his hand. So he bounces the Canonist.
That strikes me as a very much...
I guess he did want to snap in.
Yeah, and that looks like game to me.
Yeah, that's definitely game with that lightning helix.
Yep, that's game. Looks like his hand is all time spirals.
And down they go.
And there you go. Ben Weinberg.
There we go, Patrick Cox.
Wow, it looked like he was going to win game 2 for sure, and then he just fizzled on his time spiral. And Pat Cox with his Zoo deck is able to take it down. What's normally a rough matchup for Zoo, he has had the right number of sideboard cards, 9 sideboard cards for Storm.